All right, so moving on to the next segment, I'll be sharing my thoughts on Endeavor purchasing WWE. So Endeavor has officially purchased WWE. WWE and UFC will combine into one global company under TKO. This is great for both billion-dollar companies combining into one global company under TKO. WWE has obviously been a billion-dollar company led by the mastermind of Vincent Kennedy McMahon. That company has been built from the ground up over the last several decades. And then UFC, Dana White has helped build the biggest MMA organization from the ground up into a billion-dollar company as well. So I like the fact that they both will be combining together under one global company. It will make both billion-dollar companies even stronger, even better, more than ever together. And I think that's a recipe for success. WWE and UFC being together in TKO, this could set up for UFC, who is known for putting together great UFC pay-per-views, great events, and you can potentially have the UFC pay-per-view card stacked up and built up to potentially be as big as a WrestleMania. And what I say by that, I mean that UFC could start potentially having UFC pay-per-views at a MetLife Stadium and a Dallas Cowboys Stadium in Jerry's World. You could have these scenarios play out that UFC and WWE are all combined into one global company of TKO. These are both companies going to be collaborating together. Can you imagine a UFC 300, for example, playing out in a jam-packed arena like Jerry's World in Dallas? I can imagine it. I think that's great. And I think this is the reason why why $2 billion companies are combining into one to make each other better. That's one way how UFC can be as big as a WrestleMania weekend, as big as as big as a Super Bowl. If you really want to make it that big, having the biggest fights, making the biggest cards, establishing the biggest card of UFC history. Then you can potentially have UFC pay-per-views on a Saturday and a WWE Premium Live event on a Sunday in the same city, in the same arena. That would make TKO a ton of money. I think this would be a great idea for both to consider the fact that they will be collaborating with each other to do this. And then you have Vince McMahon, who is no longer the majority owner of WWE after controlling the company for a total of 43 years. That is a total of 4 separate decades that this man has been at the top controlling World Wrestling Entertainment. And it's weird to me that Vince McMahon now has a veto vote when it comes to UFC and WWE. Now that they're combined under TKO, he has a role in the company of TKO, and he has a veto decision. Can you imagine? Now, this would never happen, but could you imagine if we get a banger? Can you imagine if there's a championship fight happening, a 5-round championship fight in UFC, and somebody were to run down the ring and cash in a WWE Money in the Bank briefcase because Vince McMahon has power behind closed doors now in the UFC? Obviously, that would never happen. I'm just playing around, but it just mind blows me that this man has a veto vote now in the UFC world after being around a pro wrestling world for quite some time. It's weird to me that he actually didn't pass the WWE down to his children, Stephanie McMahon and Shane McMahon, or even his son-in-law Triple H. But Vince McMahon still will be around one way or another. He still owns 16% of the WWE, even though it is officially owned by TKO. He's still a majority owner. But I do believe that this will be best for business, that UFC and WWE will be collaborating together, and we will be getting Endeavor has really done a great job producing this, and now WWE and UFC will be under one family banner, which will be labelized as TKO. I think this is best for business for both billion-dollar companies moving forward.